Hello, welcome to the Low Code Café. This is episode number 179 for January 22nd, 2025. Today we're going to talk about automated testing and how you can use that to build reliable user interfaces. So we will be doing quality assurance testing on forms, plus some hot fixes and some other things. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plant and App, joined by Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager for Plant and App. Together we will make sure that we get through this next hour and get you some information that will be of value to you as you do low-code development in Plant and App. We do these events every other Wednesday. It's a bi-weekly team and community webinar. So 10 a.m. Central Time this hour we spend doing updates and demos and spend the most part of it on hands-on low coding, which is our plan for today. We record all of these episodes and put them on YouTube. You can get them at youtube.com/plantandapp. Our agenda today will be doing a brief segment from the trenches of support, and then we'll spend the most of our time on the hands-on low coding, dealing with this automated testing topic. We do encourage you to engage with us. You can use the chat for the question and answer. If you want to talk, you can raise your hand and we'll get to you. After it's all over with, there is a feedback form, and we'd love to have your feedback on how we did and what you'd like to see in the future. Um, as I mentioned, we do this bi-weekly, so 2 weeks from now we will be doing the another live webinar on February 5th. And there's already a plan for that one. It's going to be a live and a recorded webinar, we think, so a little bit of both, but we'll be presenting a very good topic coming out of DNN Summit. More on that later. So first, from the trenches of support, our current version of Plant and App is version 1.26. It was released in June, and there are hotfixes. I point out this is the only version that's in the official support until window, and it is a very good and solid version at this point because of all the hotfixes that have been released. And so if you're not on version 126, I encourage you to make a plan to get there and to install all the hotfixes. Speaking of the hotfixes, let's take a look at that. I have a system here that I use episode by episode, and we just install the hotfixes as we go. So this is this was brought to current 2 weeks ago, and so if we look at the hotfixes, we can see what's new here. There's a couple things, one on listings and one on App Builder. Let's look at the details of these. So App Builder has actually had 3 different releases since then. And you can install intermediate ones, but as far as I know, I would recommend just installing the most current one. Um, so one of the updates, this version 296, is all about logging, new logging, so that when you install um, updates to Plant and App, that we are recording more information about what gets done, and if anything goes wrong, this then gives us in support the ability to ask for your logs and to help understand what went wrong and work to fix it. So while you won't see an immediate benefit from that one, if something if in future upgrades you will start getting additional logging, and all this is very readable. You can open the logs and see the kinds of things that are going on in there. It'll give you clues about what we do when we install. This 126.297 was a fix having to do with listing filters. It was when you're working with a listing, it's possible to have filtering turned on, and there were some combinations of if you have multiple filters when you're filtering against an entity that it wasn't working right. So this fixes that, making sure that the drop downs correctly represent what it is that you can filter for based on the filtering you've already done. And then this one was a fix for a specific client, but if you're using the calendar view, there was a possibility to set it up if you have calendar view and a data table view turned on, there was a possibility in using the back button to trigger an infinite loop where the browser would just flip back and forth between the two views. It was kind of annoying, so we've gotten that taken care of. And then the one for listings just is the changes in listings related to that same fix for 298. So my recommendation would be that we click and install all, and I'm going to click and install these selected hotfixes and say yes. That's uh, that's the process for doing that. We always recommend that you have a backup in place before you install hotfixes or a new version of Plantain app, but and I have that in place for my for even for this system, um, but it normally just runs with without incident, and you have you're up to date. So that's hotfixes. We are working on version 127 behind the scenes. We've been working on that well since even before June, and we are closing in on getting that out to you, and that will be available for beta. We are targeting trying to get it done by the end of this January, so it's available to look at in February. We are presenting at DNN Summit, so this is February 3rd and 4th of just a couple of weeks out now before this will probably be one of the last opportunities we have to talk to you, this and the Low Code Campfire this week, just to let you know that we're doing this, and so it's a great opportunity to learn more about the platform that underlies Plantain app, the DNN platform. And so 2-day technology conference. And I will just point out that they have a website that'll tell you all about that. And then, as I mentioned, I'll be presenting some kind of advanced things that you can do with SQL and PowerShell. And so that and many, many other um, presenters make it worth your while to either go to Las Vegas or to register. You can register and do the virtual experience as well. All right, I'm going to get that out of the way. And so I've mentioned we do Low Code Campfire. That's Fridays, this same hour, and it's every Friday. And so we'll typically talk more about what was presented in the Low Code Cafe, talk about any particular coding or Plantain app issues that you're facing and maybe want some help with from either us or the community. And it's just a really great opportunity to get together with your fellow low coders. So we encourage you to engage in Low Code Campfire. The link to get to Low Code Campfire and well, all the other stuff is here on, and Patrick has already put it on the chat, so thank you for that. So you can register in advance, and we'll notify you that Campfire is going on. A little reminder and access to it. I mentioned already the YouTube channel, so the webinar recordings are there. The community portal is a great place to get questions answered, not just by us, but also the community. And the feedback form. We, again, appreciate your feedback. The link to DNN Summit is there as well if you want to sign up for it. And today we're going to do something a little different. And so there's a resource file, and I would grab that. If you want to repeat the things that I'm going to do today, this has got all the little bits of code that I'm going to implement today. And so I'm going to put that on my clipboard as well. Where is that? Right here. Going to grab that. And so we'll download that in a minute. So the hands-on low coding topic today, the remainder of this hour will be in presenting about automated testing and trying to build user interfaces, forms in this case, that you can test and so therefore maintain reliability with them. The overview of what we're trying to accomplish is that we'll talk about the goal, being able to set up an automated form testing scenario. I will be going through the setup of exactly one way to accomplish this. Obviously, there are many ways, um, but this will be one solution that you can directly implement. Um, what we'll be doing is um, setting it up so that you can create a test by interactively working with the form. So you create a form and then be able to just fill in that form in a particular way, and it will build the test definition for you. And then once that's built, you'll be able to recall it and execute it, whether immediately thereafter or in the weeks and months that follow when you make changes to a form, just to make sure that everything continues to run the same way as it did when you defined the test. We will have a mechanism to compare the results, so to see that the test worked or didn't work, and what things that you should pay attention to. There's a special considerations form pop-up. So when you have a page that has a form that's hidden, we need a little extra step to be able to get the form to open. So we'll be talking about that as well. And then the next steps, things that we're going to, we'll just kind of talk about where we're going in the future, but being able to create a queue of execution and reporting. So if you have a form that you want to test in 10 different ways, or 10 different forms that you want to test in 10 different ways, that's where we'll be going in a future episode of Low Code Cafe. But we'll at least point out that's the next step from what we've put together today. So a very simple visual for what we're going to accomplish is that we're going to have some data stored in an entity someplace. We'll have a form that will populate with that data. So rather than filling it in by hand, it'll come from an entity. You'll push a button and the results will get stored. And at the conclusion of that, we'll compare the results to the assertions or the expected values. And from that, we can then tell, did the form work as we expect? So that's kind of the big picture of what we're going to accomplish. So thinking about the goal, when I put this together for automated form testing, the first thing I wanted to do is set up something so that it would have no impact on the normal form usage. We're actually going to be testing, you could be using this to test a production form, and you don't want to drag down that form or have it be visible at all to your users. So we'll be doing no impact on the normal form usage. Um, we want to be able to, as I mentioned, preload the form with data. You don't want to fill it out manually, so we'll preload it. And then um, when a button gets pushed, we'll save the result and compare it with expected values. That's where we're going. So let's take a look at a system where this is already present, and so you again will help visualize where we're going. Um, that's one. So this is a system that's already set up. It's my preparation site for this episode. And so I've built a contact us form, and this is the form that I'm going to show you how we'll be able to test it. So the idea is it's asking for first name and last name, and then there's an option whether or not you want to provide the phone and email. All I'm illustrating here is that different people, forms can be complex to test because there are different scenarios. Did they go left or go right on particular things? What options did they select, and what impact does that have on the form? So this just illustrates that this form could be filled out in one of two ways, with or without a phone and email. Um, and so if you've worked with Plankton app at all before in forms, this is just our basic contact us form, and that's the one that we'll be using, but the concepts of what we're going to introduce can be applied to any form. So this is the basic form. You'll see that everything that I'm going to show you today is prefixed with auto test. I'm trying to give you something that you can use and implement that doesn't impact any of your systems, and hopefully you don't already have entities and namespaces called auto test. So we have an auto test, and the first thing that we'll have is a definition. So a definition will be, this is a definition of a single test that could be done. And so, for example, I'm going to focus right now on filling in the contact us form as Dale Warner. The form lives at this particular URL, so we've got that. And then the data items represent how the form is going to get filled in. So if I open this up and take a look at it, it shows me each field in the form: first name, last name, provide phone and email, and it's going to be filled in from the value. So this is where the data is coming from to preload the form. And then the next area is uh, the assertions, or the expected values. So after the form gets filled in, we expect the first name to come back as Dale, the last name to come back as Warner, and the comparison that we're doing is just, we want to see is equal. Now, you're going to see that all I've implemented so far is equal, but there's plans, and maybe that can be part of our next steps as well. But you could add other operations, like to check to see if something is blank or is not blank, or things like that. But so far, I'm just checking to make sure the is equal, and so you'll see that at work. So this, then looking a little bit more on our definition, we have a form ID, a form button. That's the button that's going to get pressed when we do our automatic testing. And I've built in a very long delay of 10 seconds so that you can see this at work. So this is the definition. The next entity we'll take a look at is the results. And this I called it results. It's two things. It's a queue of things, of tests that we want to run, and then the results get stored here as well. So I didn't know whether to call it the queue or the results, and I decided on results. It's a little of both. So let's if we wanted to see this at work, we would say we want to run a test, and the test definition that we want to run is the contact us, Dale Warner, no phone or email. When you have a new test, we don't have any results yet, so it comes out 0 results, but we have the ability to run it. And so when we run this, you'll see that the form opens up, and then the fields get filled in, and then eventually it will submit. So here we go. We'll run it. It branches to the form, fills in all the fields, and our 10-second timer is working right now. So you can see it hasn't checked provide phone and email. It has a subject and a statement, and then the button got pushed, and now we have 10 result fields. And if we take a look at the fields that were submitted, we have, this is what came from the form just now. So we have the first name Dale, the last name Warner, and there's a status of valid. So this means it's compared it to the assertions that I was showing you a moment ago, and it's all correct. So that's where we're going, and I didn't encourage you, but I will now. If there's questions along the way, please, you can welcome to put them in the question and answer, and Patrick will call my attention to it, and we'll get them answered right away. That's where we're going. I'm going to put that aside over here on my other screen, and let's get logged in to our demonstration system. This system is an empty plant and app application, so we can focus only on the things that are going to get done today. So we have a home page that's empty. We have a configuration, and it is running version 1.26. It's actually a fully patched version. There's no hot fixes outstanding. 1.26 is a prerequisite for this because we use an action that helps us get all the tokens that get submitted off the form, and so that action is only present in 1.26 and above. So we have our hot fixes. There's those newest hot fixes that were released today haven't been installed. I'm not going to take the time to install them, but other than that, we're up to date. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is that link that's on your clipboard as the resource file. I'm going to click and download that, and I'm going to open that folder, and it's here. And I'm just going to unzip it. We'll do extract all, show the extracted files. And so this is all the things that we're going to be using today. So we have, and we'll do these one by one, but it contains tokens that we're going to install, entities that we're going to install, the changes to the forms to get to do those things that the functionalities we're talking about, and some workflows. So it's all here, and we're just going to install it. I'm going to put it here on my other screen so we can so I can get to it easily. But um, yeah, let's get started. Um, So the setup, again, I mentioned the prerequisites. We need Plant app 1.26. We've gotten the resource file and we've got it unzipped. And we need to start creating some things. And again, I'm going to get things arranged on my other screen here a little bit. The first thing is, and if you'll do it just the way, if you're following along in this video and you do it, if you do it just the way that I do, then these things will work without having to manipulate them at all. If you do some other changes, you might have to find some links or find some minor things to where URLs are different, things like that. So I'm going to create a couple of pages, a system page with auto test and a form test page with a contact us underneath it. And here we go. So within our pages, we're going to do a new page called System. And for permissions, this is something that's only accessible to our developer roles. And we'll also let those same developer roles edit the page. And so we'll save and create that. The system page got created. We've got to scroll down here to find it, but I'm going to click into that. And so now we're looking at the system page, and I'm going to create another page called auto test. And pick the same permissions. And just so that you can follow along, notice that now we have a system and an auto test page subordinate to it that's out here on our menu system. And this is going to only be visible to those roles that I selected, so your typical users aren't going to be able to see those pages. Back up to the site root, we'll create another page, and that one we call form test. And this we can make more accessible. We'll make it available to everyone except our unauthenticated users. Just that's how I want to do it today, and only being edited by our developer roles. So that gives us that, and we go to form test, and within that I'm going to create a contact us page. And we'll give it the same permissions as its parent. And so now if we look, we have now this form test contact us. Good. So we've accomplished the create pages. And so we go on. The next thing that we want to do is to import all of our entities that we're going to be used things to hold the assertions and the data, the definitions, the results. And my recommendation is that you do it in the same order that it's listed here because some of these depend on the others. And so let's get that done. So we go to entities and we'll say import entity from file. And the file that we want to do, we go into our folder that we found. And the first one is the auto test assertions. And so we'll click that and open it and import. And we'll be just a quick look. This gives us the name of it. It has some properties to it like the name and value and operation. We'll spend more time as we have it looking more at exactly what gets created. But for now, we'll stick with the recipe rather than the lowest level of details. So we will continue to import thing. The next on the list was the data. So from file, choose test data and import. The next is the definition. Next is result field. And last one is result. I'm doing all this way because I really want you to be able to follow along with this recording and repeat the results so you can see everything and do everything just as I do, and it'll work the same. So so we've done this step, all these imports, and now we need to move them under our auto test entity. If we go back and look at the root of our site, we'll see that all those things, when they imported, they just come in at the top level of the menu, which isn't what we want. So we'll go through all these things, and I'm just going to move them. So the place that we want to put them is the system auto test folder, just to have them be in a standard place. And that's all I'm going to do. We'll merge those changes, and then we'll do these one by one just that way. If you haven't gotten this big scary screen before, this can look annoying and make you wonder what it is. Essentially, this is a report saying, hey, we're trying to match up what the changes that you just made to the forms and listings that were already present on the system, and trying to match them up. And it says there's a mismatch. Well, there really isn't any action that you need to take with the screen, and you can just click off of it. We have a plan to update that to be something that's more meaningful, and maybe give you something that you can tangibly do with it. But for now, I advise not to panic and just to click off of it. So by making that set of changes, now when we refresh, all of our auto test things have moved out of the top level. And if we look on system auto test, they're now all subordinate to the auto test page. So we've just moved the entities around where they appear, but we haven't changed anything. We haven't put any data into them yet. So that's next step of the setup. We have a couple of workflows that we'll be using, and so we simply will need to import those as well. So we can go to workflows and import. Okay, in the next step, we'll work on importing workflows. Note that this is a replacement section of the video, other than as compared to what was originally done during the Low Code Café. An error was found, and I'm going to fix it, do it right. So anyway, we'll work on the importing the workflows, and then we'll talk about how to about how this impacts the rest of the video. All right, so for importing workflows, we go to import workflow, import from file, and choose a file. The first one that we'll want to import is the create definition JSON. And so we open that and import, and save and return to workflows. These are in the wrong workspace namespace by default, so it's just easy to flip them to the auto test namespace, and we'll do that. The next one to import is also from file. We'll do the auto test result, delete all result fields JSON. We'll open that and import. When you import this one, you'll need to go to the input and change the type from type text to type auto test result, and save that and go to workflows. And again, we'll switch it to the auto test namespace. And finally, we'll import the last workflow from file. It is the results processing, and so we'll import that. And again, we need to change the type, the auto test result, change it from type text to type auto text, auto test result, and save. In the now we'll rejoin the video as it was done. In the original video, because those types weren't imported correctly, we encountered a failure. I've edited the remainder of the video so that the failure is omitted, and if you follow these instructions, it should work correctly. And then the last thing is that, or last on this page, auto test token namespace. So we have in tokens, and back to our folder, we have this auto test token. It's provided as a text file. We can open it up, and I'm just going to copy all of this onto my clipboard. And then this is going to be, there is an import tokens functionality that you can just click and paste from your clipboard and import. And this gives us the tokens that are related to auto test, which is the one we're going to use that's going to open up the form after a delay. That's for that last topic I hopefully will get to today. And so that concludes all of the basic setup work, all the underlying foundational stuff. We have entities, tokens, and workflows all ready to go. We just need to implement them, and so that's what we're going to do next. So the first thing we want to do, we got to have a form that we want to test, and so again, I'm going to use the contact form for practice. So we'll go to our contact us page, and we'll add a form to this page. This can be any form. You don't have to do this one, but if you want to practice these techniques, you can do it just as I am. So we'll put an action form on the page. When we manage it for the first time, it gives us the opportunity to pick what kind of a form we want to do. And I'm going to do instead of a blank form, that's my normal, I'm going to do a contact form. And so it comes in pre-populated with all the stuff to do a contact form. So we have last name, first name, email, phone, subject, message, loading bar. If I go back and close out of edit mode, You can see we have a nice form that you could fill in, and you could have a send now button, and it would send an email somewhere that actually needs to be customized, but I'm not going to bother with that today. So this is a form that we will now define where we want to do a test, and so we're ready to go with this one. The next step is how do we customize it? And I'm going to show you the recipe of exactly how, what you can walk through to customize it. And then again, as time permits, we'll look at the logic that we're implementing. So the first thing is that there's an initialization script that needs to be in the form that we're going to test. So we go to our contact us form. I'm going to get this opened up in a new window. And we're going to call this our, doesn't matter what we call it, but I like to call it something. And an initialization script happens in settings. Under the advanced settings, there's this initialization script. If I look at my provided code, let me drag that back over here. There is the form settings initialization script. That's where it's going to come from, and I'm just going to open it and copy, and we'll paste that in here. I should provide a little documentation, little comments here, but this is just when the form is being tested. This is going to automatically push our button after delay. So this is that's where this falls into play, and so that's the first one. The next thing we want to do is we want to have an on init action that's coming from the form on init actions text. So the form on init actions text, we grab these, and in our events on init section, using the import button, we just import that whole set of logic. This is actions. It's a execute actions, so I have several actions underneath each here. But what this is doing is it's saying that at the very top level, this is only going to come into play when there is a query string or called auto test operation equal to test. So this is part of how I am satisfying that our goal of it not impacting a production form. Unless you know to use a special auto test operation, the form is going to act exactly as it normally would. But with that, it's going to start having a different behavior. So that's the next step. We need to have an auto test button. Now, this isn't absolutely required, but it's certainly an easy way to do it. So this button is going to be the thing that gets pushed when an automatic test happens. You can put it on your button, and maybe you'll want to do that as you start to understand what it is that we're providing for you. But simplest is just we'll isolate it. We'll have an auto test button. And so you'll see more about that. And we're going to only show it when there is an auto test operation again. So people won't see this button until um, unless you're testing, unless except in a specific instance where you're testing. So we're going to add a button. It's going to be called auto test. We're only going to show it when there's an auto test operation. Um, I'm going to disable causes validation. So down here where it says causes validation, this means this button can be pushed whether or not required fields are filled in. And so that gives us the maximum flexibility to test with. And then finally, we have these same thing. We've got this form auto test button actions, and we're going to put that in the on-click handler. So auto test button actions. Where's my folder? Form test button actions. Copy all of those. And add them here. This is bringing in a whole lot of logic, and again, it's only operational. So when this button is visible and when they click it, it's doing lots of actions for us related to the testing. And again, I don't want to get weighed down in the logic until we absolutely have time for it. And so those few changes, what were there? Four of them, and I'll save them now. Those four changes in the initialization, in the events, and then this button. I guess there were just three main areas of change. Um, you'll be able to just import those into your form, and the form is now ready to use for testing. So I'm going to refresh, and let's look at it. There is there is an operation that's built into the logic of what I've provided you that is saying that the auto test operation is a new test. And so when we go to our form, notice the auto test button is not present. If we add that to the query string, we'll see now that the auto test button is visible, and we can work with this form, and it's going to create the definition of the test for us. So, and I'm going to use my auto test button to complete this form. Because we were in auto test mode, and because we put everything exactly where I mentioned and under system auto test, this did the work for us. So it's created an auto test definition. That's what the auto test new option does. It created the data items for us automatically. So whatever I filled in on the form is now sitting as data. And by default, it created all the assertions, all the what the form is supposed to do is this is equal. So the data items is how it's going to fill in the form. The assertions is what it's checking off of the form. Um, and so we need to do a little bit of manual edit to this um, to get it to work. First of all, we can give it a friendly name. So this is the we'll call it the Tailwinder test one. Um, this only needs to be the URL with a question mark, but not the auto test uh, information. Business logic workflow is something that we'll handle in a future um, session. So that's planning for the future. It's automatically provided the form ID. It's defaulting to a button called auto test, and it's got a very short delay of five. This is half a second. I'm going to increase this to 5 seconds just so that we can see it at work without taking a bunch of time. So um, this has automatically created a test for us that's ready to be tested, and that was our objective from this slide. We used a special key that no one, the normal users of the form are not going to know about, and then we made a test definition. So that's all set to go. And our next step then is that we want to be able to run a test. And we have a little bit of logic that we have to do. We have to go to our results, and this is again the one that I said was both a queue and a result. We need a little bit of logic that added to this, and so I'm going to open up the results listing, and it tells us that we're adding to the auto test results listing. We're going to add a run item button. So, and it's going to have a condition. So we'll do this little bit of work. So it's got a button. We will add a button that's called run. button is only going to be visible when the status is something other than complete. So that's going to make the button appear and disappear. This class puts the nice little running man icon next to it, so that's a nice to have. We'll put that there. And then the last thing is we want to get the run button code from our folder here. So the run button actions are that, and again, it's another copy and paste. So we're looking at our listing, and we've got our actions, and we import that stack of actions. And so this lets us, when the button is clicked, it's going to read our definition and do some stuff with the URL, and then go to our form that's under test. And so this is the thing that's going to automatically, whether you're testing a form on one page or another page, it's going to do it automatically for us. So we'll save that and go back. Okay, this section of the recording is a replacement to the original where I stumbled around for 10 minutes trying to find an error. We've corrected it as you followed along in the earlier segment when we imported workflows. So we are at the spot where we have added a run button to the system. So now we're just left with creating a results queue record and running it and testing out the software that we've put in place. So I have, and just going to do a little cleanup here. Okay, we have this auto test results page, and again, this serves as both a queue and a results page. So we're going to add an item to the queue. It's a pending item, and we pick our test that we're going to run, the only test that we have set up. It appears with the run button next to it. When we click it, what you're going to see is that it opens the form, fills in the form, and then submits the auto test button. So we do that. The form opens in auto test mode. Um, the form fills in with the values that we had, and then it submits. And now we come back and we have result fields that are provided. And if we look at these, what we see is that all the fields from the form are now being are sent here to the result items. We see the values that came from the form, and then there's been a comparison done to say whether or not these are valid. So by examining these, we can see that the results from this form are the same as the results that we were expecting, which was based on the assertions or expected values that we got that we stored when we were doing when we created the definition in the first place. To illustrate how this um, might be of value now that we have it working, let's say if we go to our test contact us form and make some kind of a change to it, like add a new field like age. Let's say, actually, I'm going to add a field called number of cars. So this will be a numeric field, and it'll be number of cars. Note that the field ID is number of cars, and we'll provide an initial value of 0, why not? And we'll just let it appear where it does in the form. All right, so we refresh, we now have a number of cars appearing on this form as well. So if we now go and run the exact same, we can go to the results and then create a new queue record that is running the same test. Our form has changed, and so we're going to get a little bit of a different result. When we run the exercise, it fills in the blanks, and it doesn't fill in number of cars, it just goes to the default value. We still submit the form, but now when we see it, now there's 10 result fields, and if we dig in to see what's provided, we can see that Most fields came in as valid, but we have an unknown. The number of cars wasn't an expected value, and so we've got a new field that needs to be figured out. So if we had implemented this automated testing and we've worked through the queuing of it, being able to run them from time to time, this is kind of an indication that our form has changed and we need to either adapt our testing to accept, okay, number of cars is a valid thing, or that we maybe I mean the test could be wrong, the form could be wrong, but at least it's pointing that something has changed. If we just want to accept the test, it's possible, for example, to go to the definition. Let's back up here a little bit and go to the definition of the test, and perhaps we just change our assertions to say that we're expecting a new thing. So we'll say cars, and we're expecting a value of 0 and add that. We also want to say that it's an is equal operation. Didn't provide that by default. And so now when we look at our definitions and our assertion items, we can see that we're expecting number of cars 0. So now if we rerun the exact same test that failed a moment ago, we go to our auto test results, we create a new record that's pending for that same test and run it. When it submits, it will be submitting number of cars, but now the assertions match up. And so when we look at the results from that, it shows as number of cars 0 is valid. It's probably worth illustrating, so I'll do it. When your test definition, when your form doesn't work right, or when your test data and assertions don't match up, you can, this is going to bring out an assertion kind of an error. So let's do that. We'll fill in the blank for um, number of cars. Let's say that we're providing a value now of 2. So when this test runs, this data is going to fill in number of cars 2, but we're looking for number of cars 0. So our assertions don't match the data that we're providing in there. And if the form doesn't do anything about it, that will report an error. So let's see what happens. We go to auto test results, add a new pending item, and run it. And notice that it fills in with the data that we provided. 2. The button will get automatically pressed. And now when we look at the results, what we see is that number of cars fails with an is equal assertion failed. So we were expecting the value of 0. We got the value of 2. And so again, this is just another way that if the form doesn't perform the way that you were expecting it to perform, it's going to um, point it out in such a way that you can find it easily and then decide what to do about it. All right, so in our next episode, we need to do some improvements. Among them, for example, that when we look at this auto test results queue, right now we're seeing that the run is complete, but we're not seeing any status to say that the values that we got back match what we expect. So if everything comes back valid, I would expect that we could give a status like passed, and if all the values don't come back valid, then I would expect we could do a value like failed. And that way, when we're doing a long queue of tests, we can focus in on the tests that fail. To wrap up, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just reviewing the logic of what we've put together because we've just kind of been dealing with using the content as I provided it in that resource zip file, but we didn't really talk about what it did. So let's look at all the parts and pieces. We'll open up the contact us form and examine. So within the events, we added this auto test initialize the form fields from the test. This logic uh, uses SQL to retrieve, and I got some commented SQL in here, but it's getting the name and the value from our auto test. It's actually, what is it? ATD data. So it's getting it from ATT data. It's the auto test data. Um, And so the data items that that live under the definition are used to get both a name and a value, and that goes into we're creating a list. So we have a list of names and values, and so then we use the execute actions for each list entry, and we're using those to populate the fields on the form. So each time that we get a new row that has a field and has a name and a value, we use the name as the token name. And notice that this is in tokens. Tokenized token names, this checkbox that hides down here, if you by selecting that, that says if this is a token, instead of uh, the token gets resolved, and then that's where um, the value gets stored. And so this has the name of a field in it, and when it gets um, when the token value, like this will have first name and this will have Dale, the first name field will be populated with Dale, and then when the initialization completes, that's the value that's on the form. So this stack of execute actions that we imported is initializing the form fields, and it's coming from the data that's connected to the test. So that's where the data is coming from. And then the other major thing is that on our button, we have an auto test button. And when that button shows up, this is the stack of actions that we executed. Um, we are doing two major things, and this is left over from our error. I'm going to delete it out. We're doing two major things. One is if it's a new test, we're doing something, or if it's we're actually running a test, then we do something else. So we have two major forks here. Um, the in both cases, we're using this context to JSON array actions that's storing all of the form payload, everything that is available, all the tokens that are available in this form are getting stored in auto test form payload. And so this is a series of name and value pairs you have in JSON format. So this lets us store the results of the form into a payload that we can then do something with it. And we're doing one of two things. When defining a new test, this is sending we're taking advantage of a workflow. We're sending that whole form payload together with other details about our form to a workflow, and that workflow is able to then, this is how we get the test definitions, the data, and the assertions. It's because it's just using that payload to uh, create those items. Then the other action that's going on is if we're doing a test that we're running a different workflow. It's the one that does the test processing, but we're still sending the form payload to it. And so all the work of deciding whether or not the data that came from the form matches the assertions is all being done by that workflow. So we have a couple of small things that are happening here in the form, either if it's a new or a test, and then finally we redirect back to this auto test return URL. It's taking us back to the test area, which is part of our um, piping, our planning for being able to run multiple tests, one right after the other. The form will, excuse me, the we'll access the form, run the test, return back to the tests list, and it'll select out a new form to run, a new test to run. So that's the plan. It's one that we'll do shortly. So that's the logic that went into the form, and we can take a look at the logic of these couple of workflows. Um, so we have one that's used to create the definition. And so we were just looking at that when it's a new one. The form payload gets passed in here together with the form name and the URL and the ID. We create the definition, the auto test definition, just by, and as part of that, we put the form payload. So you have uh, great visibility into exactly what the form payload is. And then we create these other things, the form ID and the URL and the name, the form delay. And so, for example, when we look at a form definition, we can see this form payload. This is what was generated by that action that generates the form, that when the context to JSON item. So we can see there's a name field. It's an array, a name field, a first name, value Dale, auto test is values blank, last name is value Warner. So a series of name and values that are ready to go to be processed. And so this makes it possible to process them into the auto test data and the test assertions. And that's what happens here. We take that same payload and create a list from it, and then we iterate through the list and create both the auto test data items and link them to the definition, and the assertion items and link them to the definition. So I'll leave you to dig into the details of that, but this is how the create process works. And then the results processing, which happens when a test is going on, it also, as we pointed out, it gets that form payload, and it's opening up one particular result so that it can process. But the payload goes to we update that test result, that queue item, and store the payload so we can see we have a record of exactly what came back from the form, and then the remainder of these this um, ends up creating um, result fields. So this is where all of the actual results from the forms were created. And then these two actions here um, uh, take advantage of some relatively complex SQL that checks to see whether the assertion for this test, field by field, whether the assertion matches the data that came back. And if it is, it has a value, excuse me, it sets the status of valid. And we have a matching similar SQL that if it doesn't match, then we get the status of the is equal assertion failed, and this is where this expected value thing comes from. So some SQL that runs quite quickly that does the comparison between the uh, assertions and the values that actually came back from the form. So this is the workflow that runs when a test is completed, and then at the end of it, we say that the run status is complete so that that run button doesn't show up anymore. So that's a quick look at the logic that's included with these workflows. So we've created a test queue record and run it. We have taken a look at the results that came back from it. Um, we anticipated talking about form pop-up, but I'll save that for the next episode as well. And in that next episode, we'll wrap up the loose ends from this episode and then go on to being able to uh, put many things into the queue to be tested. So you could have a form that gets tested in 10 different ways, or you could have 10 different forms that are all tested in 2 or 3 different ways. You can run through the tests, and those might execute in a minute or two, and then you have definitive information as to whether the form is working as expected or not. Um, and be able to focus in on exactly what changes, what the test detected, and figure out whether that's an adjustment to the test or an adjustment to the form that needs to be corrected. Thank you for joining us for this hour of Low Code Cafe. We hope that that provides value as you try to determine how to automate your forms testing. We will have episodes coming up in the weeks to come. And again, we look forward to for you to join us at the DNN Summit. See you. Join us in also for Low Code Campfire in 2 days. On Friday, we will review this material. If you have any questions from it or anything else you want to talk about, we'll see you then.